Hello and welcome. I'm Craig Harrington, and today's topic is China's free trade agenda. China is ramping up its push for increased free trade among nations across the globe before the G20 summit in London, scheduled for the first week of April. Meanwhile, it is doing all in its power to protect its domestic producers through the same protectionist measures that it decries here in the United States. The Chinese government is deploying high-level trade delegates around the world to promote its own free trade agenda and secure commitments from other nations to avoid protectionism. China recently sent emissaries to Australia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, and in February the Chinese government held high-level talks with US and European officials, imploring them to avoid protectionism. This was exemplified by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's statements made during her trip to China against protecting the American economy and its workers. Chinese Commerce Secretary Chen Deming said that trade protectionism will only make the already ailing world economy even worse. But China may be the biggest practitioner of protectionist policies in the world. The government there is well known for taking measures to prop up its own domestic industries. China has afforded its economy an opportunity to thrive because it pushes so hard to keep other economies from stabilizing themselves. China recently implemented a stimulus plan similar to that of the United States. The difference is their plan has a much greater chance of success because it does not rely on borrowing and spending. China used its massive cash reserves, generated by huge trade surpluses, to fund its own stimulus. They rely on no foreign financing or private fundraising. The government merely tapped into its own rainy day fund to finance its own projects.
The difference between China and the US is as much the difference running up to the crisis as how they've dealt with the crisis. So China has been the world's biggest saver, and the US has been the world's biggest borrower.
Another difference between the Chinese and American stimulus plans is the economic sectors they target. Obama's stimulus plan, along with the Bush stimulus and the Treasury bailout, are primarily aimed at pumping money into banks. And even the money that goes to the people in the form of rebate checks is largely dumped into bank accounts. The money that doesn't go into banks goes mostly overseas, because when the government tells Americans to buy things, it does not limit where those things must come from. Instead of giving ourselves a boost, we have ramped up the economies which supply the majority of our consumable goods. China, on the other hand, is not worrying about handing people money for consumption. It is worried about covering the massive overhead costs which accumulate in heavy and high-tech industries. Their stimulus plan, which is several times smaller than our own, is directed at infrastructure, energy, and industry. Ours has been funneled into banks only to go up in smoke or go overseas. University of Maryland economist Peter Morisi told the House Committee on Foreign Affairs that the undervalued yuan provides Chinese manufacturers with a huge export subsidy and a hidden tariff on imports. He also said that China is using its currency as a developmental tool, but this victimizes otherwise competitive businesses and their employees here in the United States. China is well known for manipulating its currency, driving its value down and artificially lowering the price of its own exports. China then sells products overseas at their depressed values, dumping huge amounts into foreign markets. This drastically increases the supply and drives the price down even further. Beyond dumping and currency manipulation, China also heavily subsidizes its own domestic industries, giving them an unfair advantage against foreign competition. Chinese officials are holding high-level diplomatic talks all over the world, complaining about the barriers that the rest of the world puts up, all of which impede free trade. But when they return home, they benefit from one of the most strategically protected economies in the world. The Chinese want the rest of the world to lower its protection so that they can take advantage of it, not so we can all mutually benefit together. China is notorious for its protectionist policies, and America, as China's largest trading partner, is the nation most severely affected by these policies. On behalf of concerned citizens, I'm Craig Harrington. For more on this and other related topics, please log on to economyincrisis.org.
Wake up, America! Open up your eyes! Wake up, America! Wake up!
Produced by economyincrisis.org.